Way back when I wrote my first one of these creator profiles for Dan Jurgens, I knew this day would come. The day that I would have to do the comic book writer that I always admired. Way back during MySpace, he was listed as one of my 3 big heroes. And it feels like saying goodbye. But today would have been his birthday. So, Stan Lee. He became my hero when I heard this story. Yes, he had just reported it now, but I heard it when I was like 9 or 10 years old. I can't remember exactly. He was fed up with writing stories that he didn't want to read. And it was just suggested to him, just write what you want. And what if they fire you? You're ready to quit anyway. And I kind of get that feeling like when Thanos put on the Infinite Gauntlet at the end of Avengers 2. Fine, I'll do it myself. And he did. And when he stopped writing stories he didn't want, when he started doing what he loved, it was no longer just a job, it was his life. And that's the moment that I wanted to be a writer. Back then a comic book writer, now a novelist. And still, he's one of my heroes.
And welcome back to the heart of the stories we tell. I'm Rob, the host, and this is another look deep into what makes a story, a theory on storytelling by a storyteller who believes that every story has merit. And tonight's episode is
Stan the Man Lee. And you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone today that hasn't heard of the characters he's created. He's surpassed probably every living writer, even Martin. Everyone knows, even if they don't like comic books, they know these characters, and they're influenced by them. In fact, the biggest movie franchise ever is based on his work. Could you imagine that? He would have been 96 today. Normally, this is where I explain what I do here, but I think that's kinda a moot point today, and I'm almost in tears doing this, so I'm gonna ask that if you like talking about geeky stuff, just hit the subscribe button. And if all the buttons, all the things. Psychologically speaking, Stan created archetypes, things that influenced us, not just a little bit either. I mean, things that have entered into the popular zeitgeist. Things like with great power comes great responsibility. Like I said, the biggest movie franchise in history is based on him, and soon those that protect the world that hates and fears them will join them, along with the first family, the one he created way back when, his first real creations, the ones I touched upon, the Fantastic Four. And I hope that Marvel does them justice in a way that no one ever has before. Although I'll be honest, I kinda like some of their movies. Not fantastic, but whatever. So let's talk about what Stan Lee actually did. Let's take a look at the Stan Lee creation. As we take a look, I'm just going to run this that I found at another YouTube site of all of his cameos, because at the end of the day, he loved his creations. And doing things like this, these silly little things, this is part of the joy for him. Because the things he created, the things that he loved, Spider-Man, the X-Men, the Hulk, being in these movies made him feel like he got somewhere. And we'll talk about that in a minute too. But okay, so Stan didn't just create comics on his own. Yeah, he was paired up with a whole bunch of really great artists and other creators. And part of the way he did so much is that he would write concepts and then have the artist go and draw a bunch of pictures and then come back, and then he'd write the script in the pictures. So it was a more collaborative effort. In today's day and age, he wouldn't have been the head writer of a TV show. He would have been a showrunner. He wouldn't be writing the scripts for every single story, but he'd be a big picture man. Another great story that I love hearing about Stan Lee is that one day he was walking through the Marvel bullpen and he saw someone had drawn Spider-Man with the webbing underneath his arms, and he made an offhand comment about how he loved it. And all of a sudden, everyone had to draw webbing underneath his arms. And Stan was all like, a month or maybe even a couple months later, why does everyone do this? And they're like, well, it was your executive order. And he's like, no, I just kind of liked it. That's the amount of power he had at Marvel. And I don't just mean when he was the executive editor. I mean, even when he was retired and not doing much, a word or two of Stan's could change entire storylines, could alter the way characters were. Because people realized, by and far, he was, and still is, one of the greatest creators. But again, he was working high concept, not just day-to-day writing. What he was doing was trying to figure out how to bring these new archetypes to life. And there are people that would argue that he was nothing without the artists that did the work and did a whole bunch of things. But to be honest, I don't know if any of it would have worked without the team up, without him giving some of the inspiration to those artists. And some of these things, I mean, people make a lot of comments about how Marvel's full of social justice warriors nowadays. But he was writing about black heroes, he was writing about female heroes, he was writing about equality long before that term even got used. And yeah, he didn't create everything in the Marvel lineup. There's a lot of characters changes that came about well after he retired. But they're all influenced by him, by his concepts, by his ideas. And at the end of the day, I hope to God that someday I am his 10th of as good of a writer as he is. But like I said, when he was asked once how he wanted to be remembered, he had this whole thing where he went on about how he didn't think that when he was gone it would matter, but he would like to be remembered as someone who wrote good stories. And I think he wrote more than just good stories. I think he wrote amazing stories, astonishing stories, incredible stories. Like I said, George R.R. Martin is probably one of the biggest names in novelists right now. But does A Song of Fire and Ice compare to the MCU? Really? I mean, aren't there more people who have heard of and have seen these movies than watched that TV show or read those books? Hell, over the years, comic books have been the gateway drug of readers for years. In fact, I didn't used to be a reader until I started reading G.I. Joe and X-Men comics, and then my mom bought me The Death of Superman. And every time I see these things, I see this man who thought, I'm done with this, I don't want to do this anymore, and then said, well, screw it, I'm just going to create a story I would want to read, one about flawed people, about flawed heroes, about people who rise up and do the best they can with what they have. And a man who lived 95 years trying to fight the good fight, tell the good story, and be a fun individual. And in doing so, he created a modern mythology that isn't just going to outlive him, but is probably going to outlive most of us that are watching this video now. He might be the Shakespeare of our time. It's kind of funny to think about. But I'm going to bring this video to a close, asking not just a question, but hopefully share something down below that Stan did or said that influenced you, that made you think. And then, of course, I have to ask you to do all the things all the YouTubers do. Like and subscribe, and leave a comment, and yada yada. And I'd like to give a big shout out to my Patreons, and if you want to see more content like this, you can always help me by building up my Patreon account. For now, though, I'm going to leave you with one final thought. If there's anyone in the world who understood how to get to the heart of stories, it was Stan the Man Lee. And we are sadder and a little bit lesser for having lost him. So I hope you have a good night, and thanks for watching.